So after that weekend up in Keystone, we came back down the mountain, and that next Monday I called a group of friends together, a group of guys that I'm friends with, that we work together. One of them was one of the pastors at Journey Church. And I wanted to talk about what had happened. A lot of them were at the Christmas store. The question that came up was, well, who's our neighbor? And then we opened up our laptops and we did a Google search. And we live in a small town called Castle Pines. It's in Douglas County. So the first thing we searched was Douglas County, Colorado. And I encourage you to do the same thing wherever you live. So to our surprise, what popped up on the Google search was that Douglas County was actually the fourth highest income county in all of America. We had never heard that. We were interested in what that meant. So we looked at the top 10. Ironically, out of the top 10, the other 9 counties were split between Washington, D.C. area and New York. And those were only separated by 180 miles. So you had 9 counties within, the distance between Denver and Telluride, not very far. And then you had Douglas County, and we were surprised by that, to say the least. But we were a lot more surprised by the next thing that we saw. A food bank website showed up next, and it said 45,000 families in Douglas County were living in suburban poverty, defined by suffering from food insecurity or hunger. How in the world could that be? That food bank was called Secor, and I had never heard of anything like that. What is suburban poverty? And that certainly doesn't exist in our community. People aren't going hungry in our neighborhoods. We don't see poverty. So a couple days later, I'm in Dennis Gordon's office. Dennis is the CEO of Secor. I kind of just invited my way in, and I said, hey, Dennis, I saw the stat that you listed on your website about suburban poverty in Douglas County, and can you share with me where you found your data? Because I've never heard of anything like this. And he goes, oh, well, the data is from the county. You can go talk to them. They have an entire department that studies this. They have for about the last 10 years. In fact, the guy's name is Rand Clark if you want to go talk to him. It's his data. He said, but that's not the real problem. And he said, the problem is not the lack of resources, right? We don't lack resources in this country, in this world, definitely not in this county. See, the real problem, the root problem is the lack of participation due to dignity. I go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, say that to me in plain English. And he goes, okay, let me tell you a little story, or let me point something out to you. He goes, look out my window. You see that guy sitting in his car? Yeah, sure. What about it? He goes, that guy's been sitting in his car for the last 20 minutes, and he's not going to get out. He's actually going to turn around and drive away. That's dignity showing up. He has a need that's so pressing, so urgent, so painful that he actually got in his car and he drove to the food bank. He pulled into the parking lot, and he's now sitting there thinking about whether he can open the door and get out. But he's not going to, because as soon as he opens the door, he's going to expose his problem to his community, to his friends, to his family, to maybe a coworker. What if people see him? And so he's going to turn around and leave. And that's what I mean by people don't participate because of dignity. And it's a much bigger problem than any of us even realize. And that's how a county like Douglas County, the fourth highest income county in the U.S., can have 45,000 households living in poverty. Take a look at this stat. Out of 121 million households in the U.S., 16 million of them, or 13%, actually live in what we think of as poverty. This is the federal poverty limit. This is families that make, on average, less than $25,000 a year. This is what we think of when we hear the word poverty. But look at the next stat. Another 35 million households, or 29% of all households in the country, live in this next group. This is suburban poverty. There's an acronym that came from the United Way called ALICE, or an ALICE household. It's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Confined, but Employed. They have good jobs. They earn good money. A lot of times it's a dual income household, but they're falling behind on their finances. The cost of living has crept up where their assets and their income has stayed static, and as a result, their cash flow is suffering. It's negative, in fact, which is putting them further and further into debt. They've exhausted their savings, and they're falling behind. This is what we mean by the 45,000 families in Douglas County who are struggling with suburban poverty. Oh, by the way, that number's growing at 10% per year. And all of this was before a global pandemic called COVID, which has only made the problem extremely worse.